Welcome to the Follow-Tonians podcast. For this week, and only this week, and for the first time ever, Eric Howell isn't here, so get ready for some intelligent chat. We're only messing, Eric. This week, I am joined by Patrick Howland, who is probably the best stand-in you can get for Eric. That's all I'm going to say. You know him from his updates, his match reviews on the website. Good afternoon, Paddy.
Thank you very much, Ped. What a big build-up and massive shoes that I need to fill this week.
I think he's only actually about a size 4. I think he actually shares his shoes with his son, Britain, so I think you're alright on that score.
Well, fingers crossed, but the sheer presence, the weight of expectations on my shoulders this week, but I will do my very best to try and fill in for the great man himself.
Great man, maybe you're overstretching it a little bit there, I think. Right, let's get it straight into it. 2 games this week, for me, showed the best parts of Everton and the worst parts of Everton so far. Both of them could have gone either way, and both of them went different ways. Let's start with the West Ham game. After what we'd seen the week before against Chelsea, for me this game was always going to be the bigger game, almost the real tester, going up against a team that we knew we were going to control the ball against. We knew we had to go there and dominate, and we knew we had to go there and put our presence, put our stamp on the game. For the first half, we certainly didn't do that.
No, certainly not. We obviously went to Upton Park with a lot of expectation after that Chelsea game, coupled with the fact that we've got a fantastic record at Upton Park as well. And given that West Ham have started the season fairly slowly, hadn't scored since the opening day of the season, expectations were really high, but we just didn't get out of first gear really in the first half. It wasn't a great game. West Ham, in the first half in particular, weren't at the races, and a very, very sort of sloppy goal really, sort of undone us, but very disappointing start to the game from Everton's perspective.
It was all the talk, I suppose, before the game about changes, Lukaku coming in, but he stuck to his guns. He played Naismith, he played Jelavic, he played Osman. Do you think the fact that the performance first half was so poor almost gave him a get out of jail free card where he could take Naismith off and Jelavic off? Because for me, I thought, well, he's got to play Naismith after scoring that goal. He's a manager that he's well respected, and I'm sure he's got an angry side to him. But I think he's also a fair manager. He knows that if someone plays well, then they're going to get that chance the week after. But for me, I said it last week, I didn't think Naismith was that good against Chelsea. I think he scored his goal, but he gave the ball away a lot of the time. Looking at the way Roberto Martinez wants to play, for me, he simply doesn't suit the style. Unless he plays up front and he's almost, a fox in the box kind of player. For me, he does nothing else. I just thought that first half performance just allowed Martinez to say, you know what, I can make that change now and no one can criticise me.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think it's fair comment. I think from Martinez's perspective, he owed them lads the same starting lineup really at West Ham after the performance they put in against Chelsea. I think it would have been very harsh to drop anyone. I think, given the sort of magnitude of that win at Goodison Park the week before. In terms of Naismith and Jelavic, particularly with Naismith, I think we know what we're going to get really. He is quite an average player, but he gives 110%. But I think under Martinez, he seems to have a bit more of a purpose than he had under David Moyes. I think he seems to know what his role is going to be in that team. And I think, given the fact that he scored that winning goal against Chelsea, it would have been very harsh on him, I think, to have been sacrificed, even though he did have a bit of an up-and-down game. By his Everton standards, though, he actually put in, a good performance. Probably, for me, his best performance in the Royal Blue shirt since joining from Glasgow Rangers.
You mentioned 100% there, but anyone who's listened to this podcast in the last 18 months knows about, players like Dennis Stracholucci, who he gave it 100%, but he wasn't very good. And that was always one of my big bugbears. He was allowed the freedom of Goodison Park because if he gave it 100%, and that's fair enough. That we live in an age where players will give it 100%, and really, really good players will just swan around the pitch and won't give it 100%, and just they'll be a flash of genius. That's unfortunately where the age we live in. I'm sure it's always been the same in football at every level, but don't you need more than 100%? Doesn't it actually need to be a little bit more to someone's game? Because for me, that's where Naismith is a squad player for me, and nothing else. Because yes, he'll give 100%, but I think when it comes to football, when Martinez wants to play, I mean, let's take Chelsea game for instance. His pass completion rate was 50%. Now, if you're playing midfield, 50% is just not good enough. It's simply not good enough for the way Everton want to play. And I think he, that's what fans really should be looking at a little bit more. I think 100%, yeah. And maybe in a David Moyes team, 100% was fine. But in a team where you've got to keep the ball, it's all about ball retention. If you can keep the ball, then you win games. I don't like bringing Brendan Rodgers and his stats into it, but I think one of his stats is that he always says if a team keeps the ball for over 50%, then there's a 78% chance they'll win the game. I know stats can mean very little, but it's a fact at the end of the day, and I think that's where Naismith lets himself down.
Yeah, well, I think we all know. I think we're all agreed. We all know Naismith's a pretty limited player. And he is very much a squad player. I think he's played in the last few weeks. Some of it's been out of necessity, really. I think the Chelsea game, he wouldn't have started the game if Stephen Pienaar being fit, for example. But going back to the original point, really, I think he deserved that start again against West Ham. And really, it's the likes of West Ham that Naismith, if he is going to play for Everton, they're the types of games that he needs to sort of be in there and be given his opportunity. But one of the things, okay, 100%, you need to give more than 100%, and I fully get that. But you've got another player there like Nikita Jelavic, who clearly isn't given 100% at the moment, and he has got the talent. We've all seen that when he first joined the club. But over the last sort of few months, last season people were blaming David Moyes for the way he was playing Jelavic. But it's clear to me when you see him playing now in the Everton first team, it looks like he's totally given up. So it's difficult for me to sort of really diss sort of Naismith when I see the lad given 100%. Okay, technically he's not great. He's probably not. He'd never ever rank in the sort of top 100 best Everton players ever. But the lad's putting in a shift. He was way below. He was way below par at West Ham, but he wasn't the only player last weekend in the first half as well. And for me personally, if you're looking for a sort of culprit for someone who is not meeting the standard that they've set themselves and are not meeting the full potential, you have to look at our number 7 at the moment, who's being really, really poor.
Yeah, Jelavic he's such a conundrum. It's almost becoming now that I think last season we all hoped and wished that what was happening last season was just a flash in the pan, was just a little bit of poor form. But it's almost feeling now that the start of his career, Everton, was just a flash in the pan. That was just some quirk. It was just a run he got on and couldn't get out of it for whatever reason. And the beginning of last season, he started off okay. He got a little bit of a knock, and I don't know, he just never seemed to recover. He came back against Southampton, he scored a couple of goals, but for whatever reason, everything just dipped away from there. And yet he scored the winner against Sunderland, he scored the winner against Spurs, and they were very much Nikita Jelavic goals. They were the ball was laid in front of him, and they were very instinctive. But it almost feels like homework's been done. Managers know how to deal with them, and because they know how to deal with them, there's nothing else there, and that almost feels like that's the way now. And with someone like Lukaku coming in now, you just think that's it for him, because I don't know, unless we're going to play 2 up front, there doesn't seem to be anything there for him. But then on the other side of the thing, you think, well, Jelavic is our player, Lukaku's not. Lukaku will be here for a year. Any more, maybe 2 at the very most, but Jelavic is our player, so there becomes a massive conundrum. What happens with him? Will he accept just being a squad player? Does he understand his full limitations? It's that's a real tough one for me.
No, but it's a strange one. He obviously set the world alight when he first came down from Glasgow Rangers, and you can point to a number of different things, and a lot of them have been already documented. The fact that he played in the Euros, which will have taken a bit of a sort of big impact on him. The injury he picked up last season against Newcastle United, ironically enough, near enough a year ago this weekend. And the fact that he was in and out the team last year as well. David Moyes just didn't seem to really have much faith in him, and he was being asked to play in different sorts of positions and stuff. But for me, his whole desire seems to have become very questionable in the last 6 months. There was lots of rumours about him potentially wanting to leave in the summer. He hasn't, for me, really pulled any trees up under the new manager. He hasn't really demonstrated to me that he really wants to stick around. And if you just look at his career path, we had this with Yakubu as well. Some players just really want to stay with a club for 12 months or so and look for the next move, and look for the next league as well. And I get the feeling with Jelavic, yeah, he might have been found out, but I think some of it's about his overall desire to improve and build upon his game. And I don't think he's got that. And I think he's definitely got his eye on his next move. And I think he'd be very, very lucky to still be at Everton. I think post-January time, I think he'd be one of the players, maybe Martinez may now want to try and ship out and bring his own players in with his own work ethic in place.
We've already seen that though, and his name's Kone, as long as it's not another one of them.
Well, I'm hoping they're going to be more like Lukaku than Kone moving forward.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. Obviously 1-0 down at half time. He brings the subs on. He then loses Leon Osman, which for me is not it's not a massive issue, simply because I just think the midfield there's just not enough pace in there, especially for an away game. I think someone like McCarthy being on the pitch, and then I think Oviedo will come on and give a little bit of balance as well for the team. He balanced it up a little bit. I think a few eyebrows were raised, but he balanced the team out. And McCarthy's in there making a nuisance of himself. I know a lot of people are not quite sure what McCarthy is. Yeah, he's still got a lot of time to grow into that role. But with the way we've been playing so far, I think Barry in there has already suggested he's going to be that player to just break things up and keep it going. And he's very much one pace, but it's almost a step up in pace from Leon Osman.
No, it certainly is. I think for me at half time, I was advocating as actually making 3 changes and really being bold, and it was basically Naismith, Jelavic and Osman were the 3 players that I had brought off at half time. Martinez basically done the first 2 changes, and by default Osman got injured within about 3-4 minutes of the second half starting. I was surprised he brought Oviedo on. I'd have gone for, I'm going to say Gerard because I can't say Delafelu that well. So I was surprised he didn't bring on the young Spanish lad really.
You sound like a journalist now. You can't repeat his name again. You've got to say something else.
It's the writer in me, you see. But I was surprised he brought Oviedo on. But to be fair, Oviedo was absolutely fantastic. I think he's done a fantastic job. He has a bit more balance. He has a bit more pace, as you were saying, to the midfield. And he gave Noble and Nolan something to think about, because them 2 guys had basically dominated, I think, or were growing to dominate the midfield. Barry had a quieter game than he did against Chelsea. We were getting a little bit overrun. I thought McCarthy came on and actually done a decent job against West Ham. And I have heard some of the dissenting voices already about McCarthy. It's going to take that lad a bit of time, though, I think, to settle in. He's come from a smaller club in a very different system, in a very different atmosphere, so it is going to take him a bit of time. But I thought last Saturday he came on and done a very, very steady job in steadying the ship, and it allowed players like Morales more space, which they weren't getting in the first half.
I think that's it, isn't it? We all look at football, I think, very one-dimensional. You see a player go off, you see a player come on, and you think it's almost like for like. But managers don't sit there all week, go and telling players to run round and train. And do you have patterns and formations and work that's, especially modern managers? And Martinez is very much a student of the game. He's very much a student of of life, and he's got degrees, and he's got letters after his name and all these things. He's a very intelligent man. He knows he can change patterns of play and knows the right players to bring on. And if he brought on the on loan Barca whiz kid, then maybe what you would have seen is a player who just likes to go forward and forward and forward, and it disrupts the whole pattern. Because as you've just said, bringing someone like Oviedo on, it gives balance to the side. I sound like Yoda now, but it brings that bit of balance where you can get Morelos into a game, because he's probably looked at it and gone, Morelos can get a lot more joy down that side, but he needs an insurance. We've seen this in years gone by, where you almost have 3 centre midfielders and one player, on the right. It was almost a staple of the Dogs of War. You had 3 centre midfielders, and then someone like Anders Limpard who could just do whatever he wanted because he knew he had that insurance. And it felt a little bit like that in the second half. It was all about keeping the ball and patience and the confidence, because that's what I see in Martinez already. And we'll talk about the Fulham game in a little bit, but it's the confidence he brings to players. Almost to say, keep going, keep doing what you need to do, keep doing what you need to do. And with McCarthy, I thought you could see him second half, as you just mentioned, noble, and he's getting in there. Nolan as well, snapping at their heels, not giving them time to settle on the ball and be allowed to pick out them passes. And once he breaks up the play, then something Barry does as well. They just give it to Barkley, because they know that he's the talented player. They know he's the player that he wants to run at people. And they're the insurance for people like Barkley as well. That's something completely different this season we've got. We're used to watching players like Baines and Pienaar and Morales terrorising wings. Now we've got a player who terrorises through the centre. And, it's not surprising how weak some of these teams are down the middle now. And it's not surprising to see someone like Barkley running at the defence. And we're talking about an era now where players just can't tackle. So when you've got a player who's so fast in his movement, it's not surprising that he can win free kicks around the box like he did. And obviously, free kicks that, when you've got a player like Leighton Baines on the pitch, become almost like a penalty.
Yeah, Barkley was definitely one of the main beneficiaries of the changes that were made at half-time, because in the first half he was getting pulled into all kinds of battles with Raphael Morrison, who's obviously a teammate of his at the under-21 level, so he was getting pulled into all kinds of battles there. But bringing McCarthy on, as you've just said, really gave him that insurance, really, to sort of be more creative and start driving from midfield as well. And it opened so much space. The other big change, though, was obviously bringing on Lukaku as well. And I'm not going to sort of hammer home the point about Jelavic being a major disappointment, but Lukaku demonstrated what a modern-day footballer who's leading the line up front by themselves should do. That guy, the amount of space he created by his runs, the way he was driving forward, taking defenders out of position, it created even more space for Barkley to move forward as well. And you could see the reaction from the West Ham defence in midfield, really. The amount of free kicks that they were giving away, they just couldn't live with us for sort of 20 minutes of that game. The way McCarthy and Barry were breaking up possession, passing the ball on either to Barkley, either to Morales, Oviedo or Lukaku. There was just so many options there, and we're only used at Everton, I think, over the past couple of years of having a plan A, really, which was Bainar, really, wasn't it, down the left-hand side. Last year it evolved a bit with Coleman and Morales, but last Saturday in the second half we had 4 or 5 different routes to attack, really, and West Ham couldn't live with us for spells of that game.
Obviously, you mentioned Lukaku there, and that I feel you say about a modern player, he's got pace, he's got power, He's a huge lad. He's also got a hell of a lot of technique and finesse about him as well. There's almost I think Jelavic is almost a victim of circumstance there, because if you compare the two physiques, you look at Jelavic and you just think, you're a million miles away from what that lad is. That lad has just got everything you need now to be a modern day striker. Whereas you think Jelavic maybe he might could do with having another centre forward with him. I mean that's one of the big problems for me. But let's turn our attention to obviously Baines and the free kick. Absolutely wonder strike for me. And then we'll put the two together. The second one again, Barkley driving through again, gets the free kick, and then to see Baines put a free kick in the opposite corner, very much like Sheedy has been mentioned a lot this week, but the confidence to be able to do that, because we're all used to Baines being a great free kick taker, but he's certainly not a 1-for-1 guy. He's not even a 2-for-1 guy. He's to do 2 out of 2 away from home. I don't know. There must have just been ice in his veins, and to do it opposite corners as well, because I think this is where we've seen a massive progression in Baines over the last few years. I remember a time when you knew Baines was the number 1 free kick taker on the pitch, but almost someone with a bigger stature, or more of a leader, maybe more of a character in the box, would just walk over and go, "No, I'm taking this," and you knew that they were going to put it into the wall or high wide and handsome, or at the most just make the keeper save. But this is for me where Baines has come on so much in the last few years, is that he's progressed now. He is one of the number 1 men in the team, not only in the way he plays, but you can tell that he's one of the number 1 in the dressing room as well. And to be maybe told one week that he's not getting a move, and then to become a player who obviously just not sulks, because we've seen that, a player who just puts a ball down and can go, right, I'm hitting it top left and I'm hitting it top right. That just for me just shows the progression of the player during his time at Everton.
Yeah, there's two main things about Osman that stick in my head. Baines that stick in my head. Firstly, it's about confidence. So when he first joined Everton, again, when you think about McCarthy as well, it took Baines around about 6 to 9 months really to settle in and feel part of being Everton Football Club. You know, he couldn't break past Jolyon Lescott in his first season at Everton. The second thing with me about Baines is it's ego. He hasn't got one. If he had a massive ego, the sort of disruption that David Moyes caused with his bid for Manchester United for him, if he had an ego, he would have been sulking and he wouldn't have been part of the Everton first team for the last few weeks. But the guy's just got his head down and got on with it. And it's that lack of ego, which in the past he's been a little bit, I wouldn't say intimidated by his teammates, but he's prepared to step aside for the good of the team if he thinks it's the best thing. And that's a fantastic sort of balancing character that you just don't see in modern day football anymore. And the fact that the guy's actually gone on now, he is the best left back without a shadow of a doubt in this country. And if he gets a chance in the World Cup to prove it internationally as well, you know, he's done all that without having a major ego and having sort of being a sort of confrontational character. He just got on with his head down and gradually and incrementally worked and developing his entire career. And he's done it all at Everton Football Club as well. It's absolutely amazing what he's achieved. And the confidence you've seen in him last week to take them free kicks. I think, you know, even like last season, he wouldn't have attempted the second one last season. He'd have probably let someone like Morales or Jelavic take that second free kick. But he's now got the confidence as a really senior player in the Everton team to step up there and do that. And the quality of the strikes were absolutely fantastic. I personally think Jaskalainen gave him a little bit for the second goal in terms of his position in the goal, but to actually get the shots where he got it, right on that post and in, you know, the comparisons are there with Kevin Sheedy. If you actually look at the 1985 FA Cup semi-final, there's actually one strike which is absolutely sort of identical to how Baines took that free kick, and everyone was talking about the Ipswich game as well in that cup run where Sheedy took one free kick in one corner, scored but got disallowed, and then took the next one, the retake, and scored in the other corner. The difference last weekend was that Baines actually scored twice, Sheedy only got one on that day. So it's absolutely amazing, and I think the player is going to go from strength to strength. I just hope that Everton sorts out his contract, because I'm getting slightly concerned that all that's gone quiet yet again.
Yeah, I mean, just on the free kicks, I think what it does as well, it opens up now. So when he gets a free kick now, the goalkeeper's never going to have a clue now where he's going to put it. So that opens it up for him as well, personally. On the contact situation, to be honest, I'm slightly worried over some of the things Roberto Martinez has said this week. You know, he's already said that we're not going to approach the contract talks, which is worrying to me because, you know, coming to January, he's got 18 months left. Now, that makes his value go down. I mean, no matter what anyone thinks, unless Everton really going to play hardball and wait, then that's the worry. Everton may think, well, you know what, we're going to get the best out of him, and you know, he might think it's worth staying. Especially when you look at the Manchester United team at the moment, it's not any great shakes. But you know, another thing Martinez has said this week is that he wants to strengthen in January because he needs to keep strengthening in case he loses any of his players. And I almost feel like the fact that they're not talking about a contract is because they already know that Baines doesn't want to sign one, and that's worry. That's a worry to me, because I know we kept them. I know we kept them this window, and that was a massive victory. But I almost feel like that was a club victory, not a team victory. And to lose both of the players would have been just a massive problem for the whole infrastructure of the club. I mean, we all know that certain fans are very much on the tipping point all the time. You know, there only has to be one thing, whether it be a badge or a player that leaves, to tip them scales. Now we seen Fellaini leave, and that was never a major problem because people seen the players we brought in. But if Baines had gone, then God knows what would have happened. So you look at it. If you look at it from a rational point of view, and you go, if he goes in January, and we manage to bring in, let's say, 4 players on him going, that might just balance it up for some people. Not losing 2 major players in a transfer window, losing one in one window and losing one in another, that might just satisfy the mob, let's say. But from a footballing point of view, if we lose him, I just think, I don't know I don't know. I think we could cope, but I just think from how you want to be perceived, because I always think this is as a football club, you want to be perceived as a club that can keep building and keep getting better. And I always think this is why we get talked down to a lot. It's because every time we build something up, it almost gets smashed down. I even seen an interview with Lukaku this week, and it said, you won't have seen this in any of like Everton's interviews with him, but he actually said Everton have got a fantastic record of creating players that move on to big clubs. He mentioned Lescott, he mentioned Rooney. I think he mentioned Fellaini. He almost was saying that Everton were a brilliant club for shaping a player before they took the big step. And what does that say in itself? That might be reality, but if you want to be perceived as a club that's going to break into the Champions League, once in a while you've got to say, no, we're keeping this player. And even better, the player wants to stay under his own, his own mind keeps him there thinking that Everton are going to go somewhere. But while Everton keep moving players on at that last stage, or have to move them on because players won't stay, then that's the issue for me. There has to be a point where, and I'm hoping that this one with Baines is the one where Everton say, you know what, we are building. We're keeping our players and building. But then players see that themselves. They see the project and they go, January we're going to buy another player and we're going to get better. Because for me, if we're, as a club, if we want to finish top 4, then we cannot lose anyone now till next summer. We can't ever afford to lose a player in January. January should always be for building. A club like Everton can never lose a player in January if you want to get to that top 4. Because look at it, last January we were dying for a player to come in, because we all knew that if we'd got a top player to push us over, then we could have finished top 4, because we could have, couldn't we?
No, definitely Leroy Fer or someone at the time. I think the worry for me is, you mentioned about Fellaini before, and the fact that 95% of Evertonians were sort of okay with him moving on to Manchester United. How much of that, though, do you think is because we were conditioned into it very early on? So, January time onwards, we were sort of, the news about the release clause in his contract was leaked out. I wonder where the leak came from on that. The fact that we were all grateful for him still being here in August time as well. It was a conditioning job that went on from the club, and the club are very, very good on that side of the PR side of things, of managing the fans' expectations to a certain degree. I am slightly worried now this week that the comments that Martinez has come out with is the start of that, managing the expectations about Baines going as well. And I'm worried because I was really overjoyed on transfer deadline day. The fact that we kept hold of Baines, to me, was bigger than buying Lukaku, bigger than buying McCarthy or Barry. It was the fact that we kept, for the first time in a long time, we kept one of our star players and actually said no to Manchester United. We've not said no to United for anyone in the last 20 years. So that was a massive statement of intent for me. And I thought, yeah, maybe for once we've actually turned the corner now and we are actually going to start building upon something. It's now starting to feel a little bit like we might have just won that little war, but we're going to lose the overall battle with Baines. And the fact that, you quite rightly say, he'll only have less than 18 months left on his contract. The bid we get for Baines in January, it's not going to be £12 million. It's not going to be 10 million. We'll be looking to get anything over £6 million, because they'll know they've got a disgruntled player there as well that has been loyal, has not rocked the boat in any shape or form. And if we're not prepared to play the player what he's worth, and he is worth being Everton's highest paid player, then he's quite right in his entitlement to leave Everton Football Club. And that's a disappointing thing for me. We're trying to keep hold of a player on the cheap who's been loyal to us and who's developed with the club. And if the club aren't prepared to back him with the contract that he deserves, then it's a sorry state of affairs for me.
I actually think the club are willing to back him, though. I don't think that's the issue. I think the club want to give him it, but because they know they have to. They know they've got a world-class player, maybe the only world-class player in the squad. And when I say I mean, because we can look at players like Morales, who maybe given a couple of years might be world-class. Who knows? Lukaku, he's not our player, so you can't go any past that. I just think Everton would love to give him a contract. I mean, I just think, imagine there'd be no bigger thing than to say Baines has signed a new 5-year contract with Everton. There'd be nothing bigger than that. But I just think the fact that they're not talking about it almost seems to me like the player has almost said, "Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I'm wanted. We'll see where this goes." Which is, in a way, I can understand that. but it can't be January. If he goes, it would have to be next summer. It would have to be next summer after the World Cup. That's the only time I could even contemplate the lad leaving.
But then his value, then next summer, if he hasn't signed that contract, it's down to $4 million.
But I understand that, Pat. But you've also got to understand what is his value worth him being at Everton this season, because we all get caught up with player values, and I understand all that. But you've got to remember a player's value is what he does on the pitch. You know, if we were to get X amount for him next season, then fair enough. But what will we have got from him this season? You know what I mean? If he scores goals like that every few weeks, if he gets nearly double figures in goals and his assists, then it doesn't matter what his value is, because we'll have got what we wanted out of him. So I look at it like that.
I was going to say, Ped, though, it's a bit strange, though, isn't it? If he really wanted that move to Manchester United that much, the fact that he was prepared to leave Everton and there was nothing on the table from Everton Football Club, why didn't he just put the transfer request in like Fellaini did?
You've mentioned already ego, though. Ego. He's. I think he wanted everything. Everything I heard was that he wanted to go, but if he didn't go, it wasn't the end of the world. He settled. He's got everything he wanted. Everton Football Club. He was interested in what Manchester United were willing to to not offer him, because I think that's the wrong word. What was there? Champions League, challenging for the Premier League. There, you can understand that when a player gets to 28, 29. You can understand all those things. He was interested in all that. It's all been mixed up with the Alan Stubbs thing, saying he wanted to go, blah blah blah. Privately, yes, he might have been very interested. Who wouldn't be? We'd all be interested in a better job. I think sometimes we get caught up in this football world. The footballers, they might love a club, but they don't love it like us. They love it in a different way. They love being, going into work every day and being with the mates and having a laugh and playing football and the adulation you get from the fans and scoring a goal and all that. But when you move to another club, that quickly changes to loving being with those players and with those fans, and that's just football. That's unfortunately that's just the way it is. You have to adapt to your circumstances, and I just think that as a player, we might be. I'm just hoping that we can get away with that for another 12 months. January for me, if we lost them, that would open up so many old wounds that just are not required, and the club for me just would think again twice about doing it. Because I look at someone like Ronaldo when he was at Manchester United, and he obviously wanted to go 12 months earlier than he did. The manager said, "We've been good for you. You've been good for us. Give us 12 months. When everything's when we're in the right place and it's the right time, then we move you on." And I think I'm hoping that maybe it might be something similar to Baines, because I genuinely do think that he will move on. But it's got to be next summer for me.
I just struggle to understand the rationale why he just wouldn't sign a new contract, though, because that protects Everton's investment, it protects him as well. And that's what I'm really struggling with. If he really wanted that move, he really desired that move in August, then for me, the way football works anyway, loyal or not, you push that move through. My gut instinct tells me he's not being offered the deal that he possibly thinks he's worth at Everton Football Club. And if that is the case, and it's totally, I've got no unfounded basis for that other than gut feel, that'll be a massive disappointment for me. Let's hope some common sense prevails over the next few weeks and we keep hold of him, because for me, he's definitely the best left back I've ever seen playing for Everton Football Club.
I've heard a lot of Blues this week say he's the best player they've ever seen. Now, obviously, that's a certain generation. We were lucky to see the team in the 80s, but we were also lucky to see players like, Andrzej Kanchelskis, who for 6 months was probably the best player in Europe, never been the best player at Everton. So we've been very lucky to see players like that. But I can understand why people would say that. And for me, I think Leighton Baines deserves to be the highest ever player paid for Everton, because it's the right time. He does it, and his influence on the team, not only his goals, what he creates, but also his defensive abilities. His defensive abilities have come on massively. Again, we go back to stats. If you compare him with someone like Ashley Cole, his stats for defending are massively higher. He very rarely gets caught out. He almost plays that little bit up the pitch, and also a lot of time intercepts stuff early before it even becomes a problem. So from that point of view, I think he deserves to be the highest paid Everton player ever. And as you just mentioned, it would protect everyone. It would protect Everton. It would mean that, you know, if Manchester United serious about buying him, they'll be prepared to pay what the going rate is for the best left back in the country. So, you know, again, maybe we're reading too much into this. Maybe there will be a time and a place to discuss this, and management just don't feel it's now. So let's wait and see. Right, let's just move on because we spent so much time on this one game. As you mentioned before, having a proper centre forward, Lukaku, you know, okay, we've lost the penalty, very dodgy penalty in my eye, but as Gary Neville would say, the player is entitled to go down, but I didn't think it was a penalty really. But again, it was the Glasgow end, it was a player in blue, then maybe I'd be screaming for it. But the winning goal, as you mentioned earlier, centre forward play. A player picks up a ball on the edge of the area, he drives to the edge of the box, and then we see something that we don't see from an Everton player, Everton centre forward in the last few years. A willingness to get himself in the box, not just stand there and admire what he's done.
It's desire. It's that word desire again that I used about Jelavic before. He's got a sort of driven desire to get in there and get on the end of what's going to come back straight across goal for him. And his movement was absolutely fantastic. No doubt we were helped by Noble sending off, but I think the other game's turning point as well was when we were 2-1 up, they brought Nolan off. Which I think for me was a bit of a game changer really. It sort of opens everything up. But yeah, Lukaku gets there, absolutely fantastic brave header, knocks himself out in the process and claims the winning goal for us. But it's something I've not seen in an Everton shirt in a long time. I'm dating back really to probably Duncan Ferguson when he first came to the club back in 1995. That sort of desire to get on the end of something.
1994.
Okay, fair enough. And I thought I was the stats man here, yeah. But 1994-95 season, I've not seen an Everton centre forward with that much desire to get on the end of something, and with the power and pace and influence on the team as well. It bodes really well for me. And the fact that the lad he was clearly knocked out and he was not in a good shape at the end of the game. The fact that he kept on going as well straight after that, obviously meant a lot to him. The fact that we couldn't even replace him as well because we'd used all our subs. So he's obviously not here not here just to sort of knock up a few games. I think he's here to make a massive impact really, and I think potentially show Jose Mourinho a thing or two as well, because a lot of the Chelsea fans are now starting to ask a lot of serious questions of why they've let him come to us.
Well, at the moment we've only got him here for a year, we all know that, and we all have to live in the real world as well. He's a world class prospect, and as I've mentioned before in the podcast, Mourinho doesn't want players. He doesn't want to knock the rough edges off players. He wants other people to knock the rough edges off them, you know. And then he'll get to finish that article. You know, he didn't sign Drogba till he was, you know, late 20s. He's got no issue about that. He wants the finished product. I think that's the only thing. You know, Everton fans say we've got him for a year. You know, even if he was an Everton player, we'd probably only have him for a year. That's the reality, the light of reality. People have said, you know, can we keep him? And the way you got to look at it is, we've bought him for a year. We've bought him. It's not just like, you know, you used to loan deals in the past where people can be recalled. But the way these loan deals work now is that we've effectively bought him for a season out of his contract to play for Everton. Morales, I thought, you know, did really well in the build up for that goal. Obviously the cross. What have you made of him this season? Because second half against Chelsea, I thought he was fantastic. Second half on Saturday, I thought he did all right, but he's been blowing very much hot and cold this season. Yeah,
I think we saw it last season as well, though. He's very much a hot and cold player. I don't know if some of it's down to general fitness, and if he's still, you know, after the year, trying to get used to the physicality of the Premier League as well. I think he's going to be one of them players, though. He is a typical wide man, really. You know, he'll have 20 minutes where he's absolutely dominating a match, and then you might not see him again for the next 70 minutes or so. He's obviously got all the attributes to be a very, very top-class player, but he just hasn't put them all in the right order yet. I think potentially, though, he could be a massive player for Everton Football Club. He looks happy with Lukaku actually on the books and within the team as well. They linked up well together as well. You don't know how the start of the season, knowing that his mate Fellaini was on his way to Manchester United as well, how that might have disrupted him. The fact that we've replaced him with one of his international teammates now within the squad might have kept him a bit more happier as well. But I think with Morales, we're just going to have to get used to him. I think being a little bit hot and cold. I think he's that type of player.
Yeah, and I think as the season goes on, I think we'll see a lot more of him and get the best out of him. Another thing we've mentioned in previous weeks was we go 3-2 up. Obviously they were down to 10 men and they can moan all they want, but you know, if you're gonna go around kicking people that you can't catch, well, then that's going to happen. But we've mentioned it in the past. It's one of my favourite sayings ever about the David Moyes era. It's the weird sub. We're not having weird subs under Roberto Martinez. We're having attacking. We're having everything's all about. If you win in the last minute, you keep the ball at the other end of the pitch. You don't invite pressure on. And again, we did, and we could have. The irony is, through 7 minutes of injury time, Lukaku could have got a couple more, and we just kept on going and going and going. And regardless of being down to 10 men, in previous years, we have dropped back and we've allowed something that Sam Allardyce would have absolutely loved on Saturday. That almost that angled ball from a centre back into the box. You look for a knockdown, all craziness ensues. But we haven't allowed that in the last couple of weeks. We've just said we're winning. We're just going to keep the ball at the other end, and that's the way we're going. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I think the major difference between Everton now and Everton last season under Moyes is we're actually better at keeping hold of the ball in them situations. So previously we would retreat back because a lot of the time we wouldn't have the ball. We'd give the ball away really cheaply because we'd be playing a bit of a longer ball as well. That was the most impressive thing on Saturday, really, in the last 7 minutes. West Ham just couldn't get the ball off us. And when they did get the ball, we pressed and harried them sort of to get that ball back again. So it is refreshing. And again, the week before against Chelsea as well, 1-0 up with that in the past. I think the last 15 minutes would have been torture at Goodison Park. But if anything, under Martinez, we're becoming more attacking and we're sort of taking the game on the front foot. It's so refreshing, and even better is actually seeing us when we're actually defending corners, actually putting Morelos on the halfway line to give the opposition something to think about, which means it takes away 2 defenders from being in our 6-yard box as well when we're defending a corner. So it's totally refreshing. So far, it's bearing fruit, and I think maybe last weekend was probably the first sign of the sort of massive goal fest that we're waiting to see under Martinez as Everton manager.
Yeah, I mean let's just hope that keeps going. But let's move on to the Capital One Cup, something that we have a long history of being terrible in. Whichever guys, Rumbelows, Milk Cup, Worthington Cup, Coca-Cola Cup, just milk crap cup. Basically, it should be called. We've just got a history of being just being awful in it. Basically, 8 changes. What are your thoughts on making that many changes for a competition that really we should be going hell for leather to win?
My personal view is it's the most winnable cup, and for a football club that's not won anything for 19 years, we just want to win one thing just to get us moving again. So for me personally, I would rather have gone to Fulham and played our strongest lineup in the first half, tried to get the job done and then make the changes. However, I do understand the argument that it's a squad game now, and the only time Martinez is really going to get an opportunity to see some of his squad is by rotating on a sort of big scale in the Capital One Cup. But Craven Cottage, it's always a bit of a sort of danger ground for Everton. We've done well there in recent years, but Fulham are a hot and cold team as well, and to go there with so many changes, it disrupted the momentum that we picked up from Upton Park. And it just opens yourself up a little bit. And I still don't understand the rationale about, sort of changing goalkeepers for competitions like this. It just, to me, doesn't feel right. Maybe I'm just a bit too old school.
Is there an argument maybe then that changes need to be made, but different changes? I mean, for me, I think you need to keep that back four together as much as possible. Now, all right, maybe in a different way. I just think that having Seamus Coleman next to John Stones... you could see that for their first goal. There was a lack of experience in that goal. I mean, the way Coleman was allowed to get round he got on the wrong side of Tarat, and then you've got Stones who's nowhere near Berbatov, and just little things like that caught my eye. And then you've got Oviedo next to Distan. I just felt like if they put maybe a more solid back four together, then that would have stemmed a lot of the problems, mate. I think if maybe Stones had played next to a Jagielka rather than a Distan, someone who was, because Distan's he's a good player for getting himself out of trouble, but he's not a good communicator for me. I don't think he can actually organise that line. I just think Jagielka could have easily played. He's played left side of the centre backs for England, so that's not a massive problem. I just think that maybe he could have there could have been a lot more communication there, and also when you put new players in front of a new goalie, again, I think it causes a few issues. It doesn't. The communication's never quite solid enough.
No, it certainly didn't gel well on Tuesday night, and I think all the points you've alluded to there, Pad, sort of make perfect sense. I think if you're going away from home in a game like that, you should be going there with your strongest back four and your first choice goalkeeper to sort of protect you, and then make more intelligent changes further up the field. But I think for me, the one thing you need to do in these competitions is just make sure you're going to progress. So put your strongest team in to start off with, get the game won at half time if you can do, and then make the changes, then give the opportunities to other players. It just makes perfect sense to me. But Martinez is not the only. He's not the first ever manager not to take this cup seriously. But if you look across the leagues as well, there just seems to be this overall approach from so many managers, and it must be something that's just widespread in football, that this is the competition that you basically rotate and change your team for. I personally don't understand it. It's the most winnable trophy for me. I understand it if you're Chelsea, I understand it if you're Tottenham, Manchester United, Manchester City, if you're going to rotate because you're challenging in Europe. But if you've got nothing else to play for, if you're only playing for the Premier League, FA Cup and League Cup, overall that's 50 games a season. There's nothing says to me that you need to rest your players, especially in September.
I also think about the competition is that it's done by February. So you're getting a lot. You can use those players up till February. You can have a mix. No one's saying you can't play. You can't put players in there. But I think that's for me. I just thought the mix was wrong. I just thought, Gibson's coming back from injury, so that's that's fair enough. It's a good chance to blood in. You want to get players like Deulofeu in there, and it was a good chance to start Lukaku, give him a start. McCarthy. So you can understand those changes, but I just think that this is a competition that before you know it, you can find yourself in the semi-final without playing anybody, and then you can put your full strength team out. Obviously a couple of legs, and you can find yourself up against poor opposition. That one's strange. So that's where I find it strange. I think the other argument is, though, people who watch that game will say half time 1-0, very comfortable, no issues. So this team was capable of winning the game without any problems. So maybe was it down to the second half subs or the lack of early second half subs that cost us? Because we come out after the break and we were under the cost till they got that goal. So is there an argument that Martin should have looked at the first 5 minutes and gone, Gibson, right? Maybe we need more out of you, but you haven't played all season, so you're a weakling. It's about winning this game. Come off, Lukaku, again, I'm not saying he could have come off, but maybe you've got a little bit more support, so then you look at making more of a tactical sub. I just think the subs let him down. I think that maybe if he'd made, we look back to the West Ham game, he's brought 2 subs on because we're getting beat. Now maybe he should have looked at that time just after half time and said, we're under the cosh here. Maybe if we changed the momentum of the game, maybe we put a barrier on just to make it become a bit of a stop, a bit of a barrier, then maybe that's what let us down.
Yeah, well, I think the writing was on the wall for me after about 30 minutes of the game. We came out the traps in the first 25 minutes. We went 1-0 up. Fantastic finish by Naismith as well. Great play by Gerard Deulofeu, and the pass that he put through to Naismith was absolutely wonderful. But we got to around about 25-30 minutes of the game, and Steve Sidwell and Scott Parker started taking over in midfield. And for me, Darren Gibson was absolutely way short of match fitness. You've got to remember, Gibson's not played since coming off against Real Betis in early August time. For me, at half time, he should have made the change then and actually taken off Gibson and brought Barry on at half time, because the writing was on the wall for me. The worrying sign for me as well was Lukaku looked absolutely knackered after about 40 minutes as well, and his influence and impact on the game started to wane as well. So very similar to the West Ham game, really, in many respects. I think that the fact that we're winning 1-0 probably disguised it for Martinez, and I think he probably thought, I'll give it to the hour to see how we get on. But Fulham were getting more and more of the ball in the later parts of the first half, and they had a few chances as well and just didn't take them. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. I think for me, I probably would have brought off Gibson at the very least at half time to try and freshen things up in midfield. But it was a sort of typical Everton sort of away performance, really, second half. We just had to get through them first 10-15 minutes with that 1-0 lead intact. the Fulham crowd, it's a bit non-existent really. They don't really get on the players' backs, but they don't really get excited when they're winning either. But I think after an hour, if we'd have still been 1-0 up and in control of that game and made them changes and closed the game down, we'd have come away into the next round of the Cup. But they got that goal on about, it was about the 50th minute, I think, and I guess gave them the momentum to go on and win the game. They obviously brought Darren Bent on, who scored a very, very easy goal. The defending was really, really poor. And it was only until the last 10 minutes of the game, really. We made a few changes. We went 3 at the back. We brought Jagielka on, and we basically put Coleman and Oviedo as attacking wing-backs. We put the tempo going again, and the last 10 minutes, we absolutely sort of took control of the game again. And I still don't know how Seamus Coleman never scored that chance in the sort of last minute. Fantastic work down the left-hand side by Morales. Ball comes across, Lukaku just misses it, Coleman gets it, and Stockdale makes an absolutely wonderful save. If we'd have gone into extra time, I think the way the game was starting to shift and the momentum of the game was starting to shift, we'd have come away with it. But it was just a shame that we made them changes so late in the game, really, because we should have come away from there in the next round of that competition.
Now, as you mentioned, the second goal was absolutely atrocious, and not only because of the amount of space Bent gets from that free kick and the fact that Gibson, looked like he was running in custard. He couldn't get anywhere near him. The goalkeeping looked very suspect. But for me, something like I've just mentioned there was a lack of leadership on the pitch to coordinate before that free kick. There wasn't anyone shouting. Didn't look like there was someone almost waking the players up for the free kick. It was so nonchalant the way the ball was allowed to get to Bent. And again, I mentioned Jagielka being on the pitch because there's not that many natural leaders in this team. I think when you haven't got Jagielka on there, I think the team struggle for that. I think Osman is a natural leader, but obviously, he wasn't there either. So no Baines either. So there was that side of it. And
I was going to say, you had Howard missing as well, who is a bit of leadership at the back as well. Distan was the captain on the night, and he, probably the quietest captain I've ever seen, really, wearing the armband for Everton Football Club. You have other characters out there as well who aren't the most vocal or demonstrate leadership qualities, such as Johnny Heitinger as well, who, to be fair to him, had an okay game, but just doesn't add that leadership to the team. For someone you'd expect who's 29 years old, has won about 50-odd caps for the Dutch national team, doesn't really have that sort of order about him that sort of brings younger players through as well. So yeah, I think it was a mistake leaving Jagielka out. The fact that he brought him on when we're 2-1 down, no to me says Martinez acknowledges the mistake that had been made there. Okay, a bit of a bizarre move though, once you're already 2-1 down, bringing on a centre-half, but he's done that before.
Another one, on the last thing on this I wanted to mention was the Heitinger situation. He was playing, I don't know whether people thought he was going to play as part of a 3 centre-backs, but he plays that role where he almost sits in front and then maybe drops in. Do you think maybe again this might have been a chance for Martinez to just say, right, we're going to play 3 tonight, and we're going to play 2 wing-backs, and we're going to try something different within the formation, not only the players? Because I think if Heitinger had just been left to just sort of play that role rather than back and forth, again, I think that could have made the game a little bit different.
Yeah, it could have. I got the sense that Heitinger's only role in the game on Tuesday was to act as an insurance policy for Stones, to get Stones through the game, which is a bit of a bizarre one, because I think the lad's shown enough already for me that he's going to have the qualities to be a top Premier League defender. But I got the impression he was man marking sort of Stones and acting as that buffer to protect Stones. The game certainly opened up more when we went to 3 at the back, and we seem to have a lot more fluidity in our play when we went to that into that role as well. But ironically, he took off Heitinger before we went to that 3 at the back, so I suspect there may be issues there with Martinez actually trusting Heitinger in his back line.
Yeah, he's a player that I think he's happy to just be about the club this season, and then he'll go in the summer when his contract goes, probably go back to Ajax or someone like that. And it's a shame really, because you think maybe in 12 months ago we probably could have got 6 or 7 million for him, but it's never really worked out the way anyone really wanted to. But that's just the way it goes with some players.
Yeah, it is. We'll have had 5 years out of him. He's not really set the world alight. Not sure he justifies the sort of big contract that he's on at the club. But, if he can step in over the season, play a key role in the squad when we call upon him, then, so be it.
Yeah, disappointing result. Disappointing to be out of the competition. Again, Martinez very positive after the game, saying everyone played well. De La Feu played well. It's another step for him to get more, going towards the first team. He's never negative about anything. He just puts a positive spin on everything, which is again is refreshing. I'm sure behind closed doors he can say what he wants. I mean, we've seen this week already Paulo Di Canio losing his job basically because he just he rips his team apart in front of the press and in front of his own fans. But Martinez has his own unique way of doing things, and that can only give confidence even when you're losing in competitions.
Yeah, well, I think Martinez lets his players look at him, whereas Di Canio, rumour has it, wouldn't let any of his players have any eye contact with him as well, or his coaching staff, which seems a little bit bizarre, really, for me. I think for me this week, though, what it's highlighted for me about Everton, and I think we're going to have to get used to it for the next few months, we're going to be incredibly inconsistent. I'm struggling to think over the course of the season so far where we've actually put a consistent 90-minute performance in so far. We're either good in one half, not good in the next half, or vice versa. And I think, if you look over the two games from last Saturday to Tuesday, we're going to struggle for consistency because we're trying to put this new philosophy into the team as well. So it's boding well in terms that we're not losing many matches. We're very difficult to beat, and it's starting to knit together. But I think, let's get used to the fact that we're going to have a bit of inconsistency because we've got a lot of young players in there now, which is great because the manager's trusting them. But with that, what comes with that is an element of inconsistency in your performances.
Well, what we've seen in the two games, we've seen two sides of the same coin, haven't we? We've seen, first half to play at West Ham, which was awful. Changes made, excellent second half. Fulham, first half really good, second half poor. And as you just said, there was times at West Ham in that second half where you were thinking, 2-1 down with 12 minutes to go. You were thinking, this is a game really we should be winning, and two moments of genius, but certainly for the second one, gets us back in the game, and then we go and win it. But you look at it and you think we could have easily lost that game. So as you mentioned, there's going to be a lot of that this season. But hopefully as the season progresses, we're going to get more and more comfortable, because I feel already game by game we've got better. I mean, I thought I thought West Brom at home we were really not poor, but as much chance as we had in possession, we never really seemed to go anywhere. And there was chances that almost, if it would have been for a ball hitting someone's backside and bouncing in, we could have got the win. But I felt certainly at West Ham that players believe in it a little bit more now, and as we move on, they'll get more used to it and we'll get better and better.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think we are moving in the right direction, and obviously the new intake that we got on transfer window day is really going to help us move forward as well. So I think it's exciting times. Disappointing that we're still not in the Capital One Cup. I would like to win it before I die. It'd be quite nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'd like to win something before I die. But let's move on now to this Monday night game, Newcastle United at home. A first opportunity for us to see the likes of Lukaku and McCarthy. So that already gives it a little bit of an exciting feel.
Yeah, it should do. It'd be interesting to see what Martinez does, because I think we've seen the two sides of Lukaku as well in the two games last week. He's definitely an impact player, but he's not played many sort of games from the start, and that's maybe where, coming to Everton, he needs to sort of try and improve himself and develop. But I suspect on Monday night he may actually go with Aruna Kone if he's fit. I'd find it really hard for him to justify putting Nikita Jelavic back in the first team after his performance against West Ham. However, stranger things have happened. I can't see McCarthy not playing, given the fact that Leon Osman's missing as well. And I know he didn't really put in a great performance against Fulham, but I wouldn't judge him just on that performance just yet.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Lukaku, it's almost, we've seen this when we had Anaxabi at times. Is obviously his physique, he's a big lad. So I'm just wondering whether that almost tempers his fitness, his stamina, and he might take a little bit longer, because we've seen at West Brom last season, he started off the season impact player very much, and then maybe the second half of the season we've seen him come and start games. Now, I don't want it to be like that, because you think, well, if he's done that for a season, then surely he's progressed to the level where he should be starting games. But if he's blowing after 60 minutes, then you think to yourself, well, would you rather have him coming off the bench for the last half an hour?
Well, I think it's all about style, isn't it? It's something that he's going to have to learn and adapt to. If you go back to Didier Drogba, who you mentioned before, Lukaku is probably the nearest thing to Drogba that we've seen in this country, and I think that's why Chelsea invested so much money in him, because they see him as a natural replacement for him. Did you ever see Didier Drogba, when he was playing for Chelsea, turn around the pitch for 90 minutes? He didn't do that. He basically conserved his energy and made smart, intelligent runs when he needed to. Lukaku's going to need to learn that in his game. Now, the lad's only 20 years old. He's already a beast of a player. I've got no doubt at all he will learn that in his game, and that's why Chelsea at the moment are farming him out to the likes of us and West Brom to try and learn that part of the game. And that's probably the difference between him and Anachibi. I think Victor's never ever going to learn that side of the game. He'll dart around when he needs to in a match, but physicality will eventually take over from him, and it'll limit his impact. I think Lukaku, he will learn over time that he needs to obviously conserve his energy for later parts of the match. In terms of Everton Football Club now, we need to be a little bit selfish as well. And I think we just need to learn how to play with Lukaku. And I think for me, for the first couple of weeks at least, I think it's gradually introducing him into the first team and letting him build up his influence and impact on the team. I would rather see him do what he's done against West Ham and come off the bench and change a match than, I think, persevering with him for the next 6 weeks, and I'm not doing anything for us. And we've got some big matches coming up. So for me, I think to start off with Lukaku, I'd prefer to see him come off the bench and sort of gradually get into his role at Everton.
Yeah, it is a big game this Monday night. It's a must win for me. I mean, especially when Manchester City's on the horizon next weekend. It's a game really I'd like to see Everton, go out and dominate. Newcastle, very strange side this season. Won a couple, lost a couple. Obviously lost last week to Hull 3-2. Remy scored a couple. So going forward they can be dangerous, a little bit like they were last season at Goodison. But then at the back they look very suspect. So it's strange to know which Newcastle is going to turn up, and someone like Ben Arthur in the team, they've always got that little bit of a little bit of an X factor. Someone who can pull out the bag. They went down to Villa and won, so away from home they can pick up victories. So it's going to be a game where we've got to just put it's all going to be about us again. It's not going to be like the Chelsea game where we're going to let someone else come onto us and we can always play on the counter attack. It's going to be about us putting our stamp on the game and hopefully coming away with a deserved victory.
Yeah, it's a strange setup at Newcastle, the whole sort of circus that surrounds Newcastle United. They never fail to disappoint every summer, do they, really, with Joe Kinnear coming in there. I'm quite amazed that Alan Pardew's actually stuck it out, really, and he hasn't become the first manager in the Premier League to depart this season. But they have got some really good players. They got Yohan Cabaye there as well, who I think is now getting over the disappointment of not joining Arsenal. You've mentioned Hatem Ben Arfa, a fantastic player. Loic Remy's a good player. Papa Cisse as well, who scored a couple of goals in midweek for Newcastle as well in the Capital One Cup. So they've certainly got talent there. I'm not convinced myself, like you, defensively that they're the strongest. They've also picked up a few interesting results this season as well. If you look at their last away match, that 2-1 win at Aston Villa. Not many people, I think this season they're actually going to come away from Villa Park with 3 points, so they've done well there to get them 3 points. I think that if they'd have failed to win at Villa Park, it would have been a very, very disappointing start for the season for them. So I'm under no illusions. I think Monday night's going to be quite a tough game, actually. Quite a tough game for us. Newcastle, they blow a bit of hot and cold at Goodison. They either roll over or they come away with the points or at least get a draw. So I think we're going to be in for a game on Monday night.
It's going to be interesting as well, isn't it? Because obviously Gibson came back last week. You've got Barry there. You've got McCarthy. As you mentioned, we've got Lukaku front. The prospect of bringing, whether Jelavic or Kone. There are so many options he faces now. I think definitely in that centre midfield, I think that's looking very, it's looking very competitive. I think Barkley is, I think beginning of the season people would have said, well, he might be the odd one out, but he's stamped his, is definitely, that's his position now, and a lot of people said that's what was missing from the Fulham game, the fact that his driving runs weren't there. So a lot of through for four for Martinez, but that's what you want, isn't it?
No, certainly is. I think for me, Everton's back four picks itself now. At the moment, you can't see anyone sort of disrupting that at the moment. The keeper obviously picks himself. The midfield's getting that way as well for me. I personally think that the strongest midfield to start off with on Monday will be Barry, McCarthy and Barkley. I just think Gibson's way short of match fitness. Morales picks himself on the right hand side. It's just a question of who really starts on the left and who starts centre forward for me. I saw enough from Deulofeu on Tuesday to suggest that he might be ready for a start, but I think Martinez might hold back for a few more weeks for that. It wouldn't surprise me if Naismith probably gets the nod ahead of him, really. I can't see Oviedo starting, even though he played quite well against West Ham. The main question mark really for me is up front, and which of the three of our sort of strikers that we've got who are going to start up there. But the team's starting to bed down now, starting to settle down, and like you, I think Barkley has become a staple in the team now. He's stamped his authority on that place in the side, and he's worth the shirt as well. You know, no one can deny the sort of impact that he's had this season, and he's getting better and better with each game as well, which is really encouraging for us.
A prediction for the gamepad?
I'm going to be really negative and go for a draw.
Oh, God.
I just think it's going to be a draw on Monday night. 1-1 draw.
I'm going to go for a 3-1 victory, I think. 3-1. Sounds good. Right, Paddy, pleasure to have you on the show this week. Hopefully Eric will be somewhere. I don't know. He might be back next week. He might. I have absolutely no idea.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. And Eric, you can have your shoes back now and step into them yourself for next week.
Right, we'll catch up with you next week. Goodbye.